My guest in the Nimataion today is Robert Rubin, and together we are spinning a yarn. Robert, you're an author, host of Magic.tv, and the Philippines' leading authority in the tarot. Welcome to the show.
Honor's all mine to be here, Bernard. Dankeschön.
So, tarot deals with stories, with archetypes. What has been your favorite story in your childhood?
Okay, this actually hits deep to the heart because growing up, I really had a profound love for the Knights of the Round Table, the Arthurian legends. And it's a series. I remember I started it in like grade 5. There was a tiny book that I had. It was a gray book with 6 select stories from the Knights of the Round Table, which we all know comes from T.S. Eliot's The Once and Future King. But there was one particular story there that stuck with me, where one of the knights had to find the answer to a riddle. And the question of that riddle was, I forgot why he had to find a riddle, but the question of that riddle was, what is it that women mostly want?
Oh, I know this story. Yes.
Yes.
I think
So
it
they
was
went, he asked,
Gawain, wasn't it?
yeah. So basically, I was going and he interviewed so many people, but the answer he finally got was women just want their own way. And every woman I shared that to just agreed. It's like, yes, we want our own way. So that story held close to me because, it showed to me that, of course, we should show women the respect that they're due. We all come from women. But it was so nicely tied to the Arthurian legend and how Gawain had to find that to save the day. So that whole Arthurian legend and the story of King Arthur and Merlin and the Knights of the Round Table have by far the deepest impact to me when it comes to the stories from my childhood.
That's wonderful. If I remember correctly, he met a woman, or the story goes that he should be married to a woman, and she was hideous. She was ugly as you can imagine by day, and at night she was the most beautiful woman, or something like that.
I recall that. Yes, it was like she was a hag during the day, but in the evening she was very beautiful. So it shows like that the beauty of women is not just skin deep; that it can also be something even deeper. It's such a beautiful metaphor.
And he had to he had this riddle in order to make her beautiful for the whole time or something like that. It's
eternity.
I think it is a Celtic legend in origin, because they always deal with this liminal spaces and changings and everything. And I think the authors who gathered the legends of the Knights of the Round Table, they tied it in this whole work of stories.
Definitely. And it's impressive how like you could learn a lot about yourself in these stories just by who you relate to. Like you could if you're a person who wants to prove himself, then you probably would have more of a inkling towards Percival. Or if you were somebody who was leaning towards Lancelot, you have such self-esteem, but you could be a bit of a bad boy. Or if you were inclined towards King Arthur himself, you understood the burden of leadership and of responsibility. So the story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table is such an integral part of who I am. I never really got to read much of the other lore, but growing up, it was just part of just my whole legend. That I'd say if ever I had a younger boy, I would name him Arthur. So I'm still waiting for that to happen.
Was Arthur your favorite character?
Actually, I was torn between him and Merlin. I could never choose. That was my dilemma. Like if I had to let one go, would it be Merlin or would it be Arthur? And it was although I saw myself more of an Arthur, I just was so entranced by Merlin. And I think that's what got me fascinated in occultism and in magic, because, he had all the answers. He had all of he was wise beyond his lifetimes. And it was just something we all aspired. He was kind of like the Gandalf of his time.
Of course. And he has such a dire, bleak ending, doesn't he?
Exactly, especially how he was imprisoned by
Yes.
the one he fell in love with, which was Morgana Le Fay, which is kind of like the ultimate bane to most magicians, that they would usually lose their power due to falling in love with one vixen of a soul.
Yeah, yeah. It's the downfall of most of the knights is some entrapment or enchantment by a very beautiful woman. It's of course Lancelot and Guinevere and everything. There is this thing, and that's interesting because Gawain, who is always mixed up with beautiful women, also the Gawain and the Green Knight and so on. Um, he solves this riddle by not taking action, by not he's forced not to be fighting or slaying dragons. He has to be very like on his knees and accept that I don't know. What do you want? This is
It,
yeah.
it, it shows Gawain is very symbolic of the humility necessary in order to
Yes.
get the answers that you seek, because people can be control freaks most of the time. Example, like the whole story, like you said, there's a lot of the downfalls of the Knights of the Round Table was because of their entrapment to women, but it actually shows that the most powerful beings in the story were actually the women. Like Arthur fell into depression because he lost Guinevere, and Merlin lost his power to Morgana. So it's actually, it was, I like the fact that it was nice and balanced. It showed the power of the masculine, but it also showed the stronger power of how the feminine can also be important in it as well. So it's a nice balance. So people can't say, oh, the Knights of the Round Table is a masochistic wet dream. No, because it's usually the women who end up getting what they want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's because these newer stories they derive from the ages where the how's it called the Minnesang in German, the troubadours and so on. They had this ideal, and I was always fascinated by the older stories, like they are told in the Welsh myths, like Culhwch and Olwen. Do you know these stories?
No, I haven't heard of them. Never.
There we meet Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and they are totally different. They have like shamanistic capabilities. Like
Wow.
one knight has such a keen eye that he can shoot an arrow from Cornwall and shoot a leg off a fly in Scotland or something like that.
Wow.
And the other one can pull his lip over his head, or another knight emanates such heat that he never gets wet because the rain evaporates before it reaches him, and so on. They are totally different stories. They're very, very old, and so that changed, and it's fascinating, isn't it? Like you said, it's the Gandalf of his time. Now we have this archetype in a totally new form, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested in how the legends will become like in a few hundred years.
The way things are going now, I feel that the next Gandalf for like in 100 years would be some sort of social media wizard. Somebody who could like really like, don't you think? Because there was a time that everybody was on this internet and they were all there, and there was a master of it that he can control it all, like kind of like a benevolent Elon Musk or something like that. Somebody who understands the algorithms and can just play with everything. Because if you look at it, all the data, everything in the world is basically controlled by data, from our bank accounts to our records, everything. And if you find a technomancer who can control that data at will, that's omnipotence. Like, what if there's a man that said, I can snap a finger and everything about you is deleted? That's worse than actual assassination. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
next Gandalf might be some neuromancer or something like that. Who knows?
yeah. And if Tom Campbell is right and we are living in a computer simulation, then you might be nearer to the truth than we might dare imagine.
Well, that scares me because of Rose Basilisk's theory. I'm sure you heard of that, and I don't really want to think. It's basically like that. It says that there's supreme intelligence, and if we even think about it, if we're either with it or against it, and if we're against it, it's going to destroy us, and if we're with it, it's going to give us heaven on earth. So it's kind of like saying if we are in a simulation, sometimes I don't even want to think about it because there's potential truth to that.
I love how this conversation went from favorite childhood story and the Knights of the Round Table to a very neo-Gnostic idea. Great.
Who are we to say that we're not the next Knights of the Round Table? That's the funny thing. For all you know.
Yeah, that's a great point to end on and a great idea to live with. Robert,
Well,
thank you
it's
so
always an
much.
honor. If ever you need me, I'm always here for you.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to talk with you again soon. Thank you
Anytime,
so
sir.
much. Bye-bye.
Good night.
World is magical.